Hello, wonderful ULARP watchers, and welcome back to LARP Chat. Today I've managed to sweet talk Matt into joining us. I first met Matt at a random wedding. I hope the people at the wedding don't watch this and say, oh, they've called this a random wedding. I'm sure that'll be fine. That'll be cool. That'll be fine. And then later on at LARP. So Matt, welcome to LARP Chat. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Good to see you. Unfortunately, we can't meet in person because of all of the joy that is COVID still, and you live further than 10 meters away from my house, so I'm quite lazy.
Yeah, we are east of England, so unfortunately, it's a little bit further.
I'm a true Londoner now. If anything is happening outside of London, it doesn't really exist. There is only London, and that is all to me now. So I've done some sort of chats like this before, kept it quite informal, just to let you know what we're going to be looking at. Some of the questions that have come up is how to first get started in LARP, and then sort of how the hobby can progress for you, and then some tips for new players from Matt as well. So I wanted to chat with Matt because he's someone I'd seen around at LARPs. I'd seen the way that he was playing the game and how he was interacting with systems and things like that. And I thought, this is someone who kind of approaches LARP in a sensible way and a good way to actually enjoy the hobby and get the most out of it for themselves. So this is a question I always like. How would you try to explain LARP to that work colleague who's seen a picture of you on Facebook dressed up, and you have got to try and explain the hobby to this person?
Okay. Do you know what? Actually, I had to do this. So I have the pleasure of working with a lot of farming customers, and a lot of my colleagues are not exactly what you'd consider geeks or into nerd culture. Although I did manage to convince one of them to join us at PD's Empire LARP. It was really simple. For me, it was, this is live action D&D. And with things like Stranger Things, the community episodes where they play D&D, those sorts of things coming more into the forefront. And, you've got some fairly big names in Hollywood doing D&D now and bragging about it. You're sitting there going, yeah, it's live action D&D. You play a hero. You are the hero of your own story. And you go off and you explore different worlds. I try to avoid cross-country pantomime, which is, I think, the tongue-in-cheek joke that a lot of people use.
That's what Oliver Fantasy uses.
Yeah. Whilst the nation I play in Empire, which is the predominant system I play at the moment, can be very pantomime in places, I prefer to think of it as collaborative storytelling, or rural collaborative storytelling, I think is what I've used recently.
It's a nice way of summing up. Good. I've had to explain it to some work colleagues, and I always fail horrendously, so I'm going to try that technique. We'll see.
Yeah,
it's hard to judge how geeky someone is, and like you said, yes, some geek culture has become much more mainstream. I don't think LARP is there yet.
Do you know what? Actually, I have one friend who I'm hoping is going to see this. He is very much into his cars. He's into his football. I'm not saying you can't enjoy sports and be geeky. I for one, am not part of the sports ball massive. I appreciate that you kick leather and it goes in a goal and everyone cheers. I'm not sure more than that. But he is your traditional lad, into bodybuilding, into like going to the gym in his cars. And he genuinely wants to come along because the concept of having fights, experiencing a world that is not the norm, and do you know what? Telling some stories, it's something that's kind of got to a person. You sit there and say, you get to stop being yourself for a weekend and go off and play something with no real world consequences, so long as you behave. Suddenly that becomes very appealing. Yep. People do, murder mystery weekends. They go on lads holidays to Amsterdam. Why not go to a LARP field, drink some decent beer, meet some decent folk, and actually have a decent time? Yeah. That's normally a selling point.
A good friend of mine was going to do it for his stag do and take dads along and stuff like that. And I just thought, this will end in complete chaos, but okay.
I would love to see that. I would love to see a bunch of like proper, dads who have never, no computer game experience, no tabletop experience, just stepping in, being like, the bloody elf over there, go and talk to him. I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that.
For you personally, how did you get started?
So I'm a bit weird. I have always been into swords and sorcery and magic and computer games, but I had no experience of D&D. I had no experience of live gaming. I didn't really have any friends who did stuff like this. I had an older brother who, myself and him, we were geeking. We grew up in coastal Essex, so there's not really that big a geek culture there, at least not that we experienced. So when I go to university, and I went to UEA in Norwich, I'm there for my second day, and I see these people on a Sunday running past and absolutely, laying into each other with these swords. And I'm thinking, I'm in the middle of playing rugby with these lads, and I can't take my eyes off these guys with swords. Then a chap who I'm still fairly good friends with now, because we play D&D together. He comes up to me at the Society's Fair, completely in red face paint and black armor, and goes, "Do you like sword fighting?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like sword fighting. I like sword fighting a lot." He goes, "Cool. Sunday, midday, go out there. You'll see a bunch of people and you get to know us." And I went out there. I turned up in jeans, a t-shirt with a tight like wool cardigan. I was very preppy in early uni life. And I'm there with lads in like black metal Metallica shirts and stuff like this. And next thing you know, I've joined the Erin LARP Society at Norwich UEA. And I played there until I left UEA. I ended up falling into Festival LARP through them. Some of the people still are fairly big names in, PD LARP and things like that. And as I said, I made a lot of friends, a lot of people there. In fact, if it wasn't because of meeting them, I actually wouldn't have met you. So it's I know. So you can blame them.
I'll find out who they are. So one of the overwhelming things that I hear from most LARP is how welcoming people are outside of the game. And from what you've just said, would definitely agree with that. So I remember when I went to my first LARP, luckily I went with a group of people who I knew outside of the game. And it can be tough because if it's like that situation where you don't know anybody, to have someone come along and just break the ice like that, I think is.
Yeah, and that person they're fantastic. They are one of the, I don't want to mention names in case they don't want to take credit for it, but they are such an amazing storyteller. They know how to get you involved in a game, in a story, and make you invested. And this was a university LARP system. We had decent weapons. Some of us had decent kit. I mean, most people had decent kit, but we weren't wearing it. We were in jeans and t-shirts, and the story was a bit loose. And we worked on something called a battle board system. Now, for those of you who don't LARP, battle board system is quite archaic. The mass is very strange. I still remember some of that. I think a single point of damage did actually 6 hits to your health. It worked out mathematically, and it definitely was written by someone who was very good at maths. I, however, do not do maths. I do smiling and charming and trying to hit people, which is why I played a paladin the first time. Everyone's like, no. You're starting this game, don't play a paladin. There's consequences if you do stuff wrong. In my first adventure, I fell as a paladin, lost all my powers, and that was it. For the next 2 years, I was trying to figure out how to get my powers back. It was amazing. But everyone who was part of that group was so welcoming and so caring and so kind. And it is, as you said, you meet these people, and through them I met the people who are members of my effectively family now. These are people who I see at the mainline games that I do. These are people who come to my home, and I have barbecues with. These are people who I met because of this and because of this hobby. There is a lifestyle to LARP, but when you join that lifestyle, you then gain, long-term friends. It's incredible. I've never met a hobby like it.
No. Why do you continue to do it? What is the draw at the moment?
So there's 2 reasons. And I'm sure, so I will mention PD. because profound decisions are as I said, it's the main system I do, and I am a red cap
Sorry.
So okay, so a red cap is site crew. So we put up your tents, we manage everything to do with anything from security to traffic management to heck cleaning the toilets, managing the woodland. Red caps are effectively they are skilled dog bodies.
Okay.
And we often joke and say, oh yeah, you couldn't get someone to join this, but it's a cult. It's a cult. It has to be a cult because there's no way you're this happy working in horizontal freezing rain, putting a tent up for someone. There's no way you can be that happy doing it. And the first reason I do it is because I gain so much satisfaction from the amazing team that PD have. They're just fantastic, they're incredible. And they'll put tents up for a customer and they'll just go, oh, thank you very much. And they'll just get all their stuff in. And next thing you know, you've got them telling you about their story, who they are as a person, their first LARP, what they're up to. And you have this interaction with people that is incredible. The second reason is because I get to have those interactions as a person every day as part of the setup. But when I'm in character, I'm no longer me. I can play someone who, in most cases, can be a bit of a bad guy, is a little bit naughty and misbehaves, but has a heart of gold. He thinks. Whether he does is a completely different kettle of fish. But telling a story to me is great. I've always, as I said, I've always been a fan of stories to swords and sorcery. It's been a huge thing for me growing up. And I have children, and it's a huge thing for them because they own LARP swords, they own wooden swords and shields and things. They have their own equipment, and I tell them stories about adventures that I've gone on, and it's like bedtime stories now. They are things that completely, this is it. It's part of my life. And my daughter, she's 3.5. She went to her first LARP event when she was 3 weeks old, purely because of the way it fell in. Yeah, we went down for a day. Myself and my partner at the time, we went down for the day, and we, partly wanted to show it off to our friends in the crew, but I also wanted to show it off to my LARP family and my household and go, this is my daughter, guys, you've not had a chance to meet yet. And it was a very transformative experience. It became a huge thing for me, and suddenly I'm no longer just a lad. I'm walking around my baby and I'm telling a story, and my baby's now part of the story. The two reasons are, one, I'm almost certain I've been indoctrinated into joining a fantastic cult who are the salt of the earth and will bend over backwards for you. Two, because storytelling and making a believable, realistic world and having that pay off every single time is incredible. And that, to me, it's addictive. It's wonderful like that. I ranted there. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it was good. It was good. I can agree with what you're saying. Definitely. I think a lot of people have got their own reasons for why they do it. Some for the escapism, some for the living something outside of their life. For me, my job can be quite stressful, and I've got to be hyper competent constantly and make no mistakes ever. So whenever I play a LARP character, 9 times out of 10, I love to play someone who purposefully makes horrendous mistakes.
See, I loved your Dornish character for that exact thing of like this. I remember Alex, who we also know. He was telling me so many stories about your noble and some of the stuff he did. And back when you could and you got permission to it, and you had your was it a GoPro to watch the battles?
Uh-huh.
I loved the dialogue you had during combat. This is the time that most people will admit that they drop character because they want to win, they want to be at their best. But you, the entire time, are, oh, Ballyhoo, we're going over there. It's going to be fantastic. We should charge the enemy, and then you're going to go around the back, and it's going to be brilliant. And then you're sitting there the entire time. And I think there's one point it's like, oh, bugger, I think I left my wine on the side, and that broke me. And it's like, that's perfect. That's amazing. And of course, you have a very stressful job, but you're doing this very incredible, very convincing Dornish knob, for lack of a better word. And it's fantastic. It's just brilliant.
The fine art of purposefully making the wrong decision as well. It's a real skill to be able to look and be like, okay, what is the right decision here? This is what any normal sane person would do, is choose this. Okay, let's do this then.
Yeah, I find I always go for the riskier choice. If there's two options, I will always go for the one that, because you often hear about this in storytelling, you hear about levers. if there are two levers in front of you, one which is everything works out fine, or things might go a bit weird, but you'll be weird too. I go, yeah, I'll go weird. And do you know what? It went so weird that myself and my daughter, we had weird stuff happen to us. So my daughter, who is 3.5 years old, has important plot that she can deal with when she's older.
Nice.
Yeah, and to me, that's huge. And I imagine you feel the same, when you're telling stories, or because of course you run a D&D stream, the stories you're telling and seeing how it works with the players, I assume to you that makes you go, I'm interested to see how they'll deal with that. Or I wonder what they'll do. For example, say an unarmed person rides up to a gate. What would they do?
Apparently murder them in cold blood.
Apparently murder them in cold blood in front of a paladin. It will be fine.
Yes, indeed. No spoilers there if you're watching the stream.
No spoilers.
It can be very easy to look at LARP through rose-coloured goggles or glasses all of the time. Has there ever been any times which have been incredibly low at events where you yourself?
Yeah, and I will say that my low points have always come from the real world. So I'm not one of these people that can just turn off the real world. I'm quite visceral. It's all on the surface, And there were a couple of times that I've had a few things happening in the real world, which have made me go, oh, why the hell am I here? I shouldn't be here. I should be at home dealing with situations. A time that sticks out particularly in my mind, which I'm sure once again, PD player will know, will be Storm Katie, which was the first ever event at the current site they're using at this time. I spent a grand total of 6 hours in character over 4 days because I was in wellies shoveling bark to make sure people were all right. And I missed the battle because I then was shoveling bark and pinning tents down. So my monster slot was me standing up on a hay bale telling Dawn to go home. If there's no reason to stay, we'll keep running the game, but if you are not coping, it's going to get worse. And I remember that. There are pictures of me doing that, and I remember how awful it was because I then jumped down off this hay bale and went and pinned tents in for people. And my crew slot, and I should say this, and I will say this 100%, always monster. Always 100% monster. Do your crew slot. Monster's great. Monster's fantastic. But I knew the second I jumped down from that hay bale, my job was to make sure that nations' tents weren't blowing away. And I walked around site with a shovel and a sledgehammer responding to radio calls, and it was exhausting. I remember going into a tent and then having a good drink. Must have been about 2 a.m, and everyone had stayed IC just so they could have a chat and keep talking. We step out the tent and the tent collapses. So we have to put it down, and it's 2 a.m, and there's horizontal freezing rain. And I go back to my tent, which was a bell tent. It was a replacement bell tent because my tent, my center pole had shattered that day, which was a pavilion wooden pole. So it was about 1 inch thick. So you could see, it was almost a hurricane. And I sit down and I hear the creak and I see the bell tent center pole break. And I spend the night in this semi-broken tent because there's just nowhere else for me to go and I'm exhausted. And I wake up the next day just thinking, why the hell am I here? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then I lived on site for 2 months after that because I wanted to work with PD and help them tidy up and make sure it was good.
Oh.
As I said, it's a cult. I can't tell you why I did that because in that moment, I needed to go home and refresh. So the Monday morning, we drove home. I had a refresh. My ex-partner drove back. And then the day after that, I came back because they needed us. Because that was my low point, but I came back. And we talk about community in LARP. Community is a huge thing. Community is a massive, massive thing. Because if you're willing to give an inch, most people will give you a mile. If you're willing to go a mile, most people are willing to try and keep up with you. And I think that's important. We're talking rose-tinted glasses. I don't want it, there are going to be people out there who don't feel that way. But I personally haven't experienced it yet. And I've been doing it for 11 years. Yeah. I haven't experienced a situation where I've just gone, do you know what? You and me, we ain't Never. There are sure few. I'm sure there are a few people who hate me. Absolutely, and I'm sure that it's well deserved.
It's funny you
And
should
I
say
know
that.
why-
So
Well,
come in, guys.
here they come. Yeah, I know there have been a few changes I've needed to make. When I first started, I was very plot and story focused, but now I'm very much of the mindset of you're on holiday, you're there to enjoy yourself. My job while I'm there, if you're part of my team, part of my group, if you're not having a good time, I will drop everything and help you. And I think it's because I hit that low point in the past, and I've had low points where I've gone, oh Christ, this is hard. That I'd rather make sure that no one who is effectively my responsibility feels that way again, which is why I do stupid things like plan player events. So, yeah.
We'll get onto it in a minute.
Oh yeah, sorry, jumping ahead.
So I've experienced that from the crew side when you've had like a very small crew for a high combat game, and all of the crew absolutely bust their balls, and it's exhausting, but there is a strange satisfaction to it at the end.
Yeah.
To have, you know what I mean? I've given this my all. I have done my best, and I've pushed through and come out the other side of it. And I know what I am capable of now from doing this. Yes, there were points where I was like, what the hell am I doing?
Because if I remember correctly, you did the Iron Raptors event at Eversley a few years ago. Is that correct? Yeah. I remember there being a handful of crew and you throwing yourself at gates and against the tide of orcs who are players and are fantastic. Yeah.
Well, that one was always a pleasure. That was fun fighting, but I've had some horrendous ones where we had one which was a high combat game, and we had 11 crew versus 50-something players. And it was high combat. And that was an experience.
Did you feel that the players thought it was high threat, or did it feel very...
They said they felt threatened, but it was a tough event to do.
I can imagine. 11 of you versus 50 of them.
And out of those 11, 3 of them were brand new LARPers, had never LARPed before. Just came off on a one-off.
Yeah, that must have been...
But looking back at that, like you were saying, like other people on that crew, there are people who I will now look out and find at events to go and speak to them, because you've got some kind of weird bond with them, and it's some kind of...
You've got that almost like survival spirit of, we've been through hell together. Yeah, I know that you are always going to be someone who I will make time for. And
it may sound really odd, yeah.
There you go. Do you know what? My second ever system, it was a crewing role for me, was someone who is a big name in LARP, but I knew through doing a Dark Age reenactment. And I went to his event, which was all Jane Austen themed, but it was basically funny event, but it was called Pride and Predators.
Nice.
So you had these wonderful people being like, oh yes, he's worth 5,000 a year, and then me diving through a window and blowing a hole in an animal's chest as a predator. It was amazing, but we had a very small crew, and I remember fighting in Coventry in the dark in this orchard, and just having people blow the crap out of me, and just thinking, do you know what? This is bad for the character I'm playing, but I will always try and find the people who are with me in this. Yeah. And when PD announced Empire many years later, I ended up gravitating towards those people, not through like intrinsically trying, not through like an active trying to, but through intrinsically just gravitating towards people who I knew would be fun game. And it was really nice to see, you have these people who you kind of go, yeah, you know what you're doing. You're going to be fun. I'll introduce people I know who are new to you. So hopefully they have that same experience. Yes.
We talked about it briefly a second ago, minutes ago now, how when you were a new LARPer, your goal was different. And as you've matured, your goal has changed. How do you win at LARP? What is winning?
When I was younger, it was being the best fighter, the best at finding magical items, the best at finding plot, be that player made or crew injected, because there is a difference. There is the plots that players have amongst themselves, including house rivalries, their own storylines, and then there's a plot that is the world plot, which is canon to the world and is injected through PD, for example. And I'm going to keep using PD because Empire is the game I've played the longest. I will keep using that one. It's, to me, winning at LARP was being the best fighter, being a good fighter as well, and being known for being competent and brave and being a hero. Haha, look, I'm swash swash buckle buckle. Now it's different. Now it's, how do I win? I come home thinking I've told a good story.
Yep.
I've made someone's game. I've made someone's story either better or more challenging, which means it's something for them to overcome. And as I got older, I experienced something called Campbell's Hero's Journey. Are you aware of Campbell's Hero's Journey?
Ish.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, it's the idea that there are, in every story, in every good story, be that Gilgamesh, the Odyssey.
Star Wars is a good example of it.
Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z. If you're going to go anime, start with, the call to action and then the rejection to the call to action. And there's a load of other steps which you can literally pan out. And on most stories, be that The Hidden Blade of Akira Kurosawa, Mifune, Lord of the Rings, One Punch Man. These guys all have this same story. And you've got this kind of path that they go with. And the idea is that if you can hit any of those paths, any of those sections, but inject it into another person's story so that they are then either on a tangential or you get them to start at the beginning, that to me is a win. So once again, using Empire, because once again, it's the one I played the longest, I have recently become a bit of a heel to certain other members because I made some choices a few years ago, which as a character I thought were the right choices, though as myself, I thought, yeah, I'm going to get in trouble for this. But I did that because I knew that it would generate game. And generating game is, for me, the win. Even if it's not for myself. If someone on the opposite side of the field goes, hey, Matt Peary's character is doing X, Y, and Z, we should stop him because that affects our liege lord's plan to have the biggest cabbage in all of Christendom. Go and do it. Yeah, be that person. If it's, hey, Matt Peary's growing the biggest cabbage. I hate this group whose liege lord wants to have the biggest cabbage in Christendom. We should go and help him. And I could never know these two warring factions, but now there's a war going on because I want a bigger cabbage. And that's great to me. That's huge. Having people talk about stuff that my character's done, which, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't actually change too much in the game world, but has, religious ramifications, political ramifications. It might affect a diplomatic trade deal with a horrific slave trading nation. We want those stories to be told because, and it's a big thing, isn't it? It's legacy. It's legacy. You want to be remembered for being cool and smart and charming and, being able to do a kickflip on a skateboard, even though you haven't done one in 10 years. You want to be known as that guy. But if my legacy can be that I told good stories and I made other people have fun, that's winning. That's winning to me. And that is, if I could go back in time and tell early me what winning looked like, I would do that and let him know that it's not about you, it's about everyone. Because LARP isn't a single player game. It's a giant collaborative story.
Yeah.
Just like in D&D, you don't have a main character and supporting cast. Everyone's a hero.
Yeah.
And you get it. You understand.
I like it.
Yeah, this is wholesome me. Get me a couple of drinks in me. I'm sure I'll be like, yeah, I hate X, Y, and Z because they looked at me funny one time. They'll be fine, I'm sure. Or it won't, let's face it. It takes all sorts to make a world and a LARP, which is the important thing.
So it sounds like your kind of progress through the hobby has been relatively organic. You were a bit of a geek. You saw some swords. You had your own swords. You stumbled upon some people doing some LARP sword fighting.
Yeah.
And their own system. at a university while you were doing something else. You got involved with that as a player. You then kind of stepped up from being a player to kind of be site crew, red cap, and making sure that that was happening. And then, where's the next step from that?
Well, the next step from that, we mentioned it earlier, is running things. Okay. So I had the pleasure at Empire of burning a wicker man, a huge wicker man. You know, people will tell me it was 30 foot tall. I will never confirm the actual height of the wicker man because it will always be bigger in someone's memory. My daughter actually helped build it. She was 3-4 months old, so she was there. So part of that, part of that was a big thing for me as a father to do that. It was kind of a transformative thing for me. Now, looking at folk horror, it is running events. It is going into the themes that we are experiencing and aren't really touched upon in the mainline games and seeing if we can make a tangible event out of it. I'm very big on doing large set pieces at Empire. We basically set up a swamp for Wintermark, which was a few pine boards and a bunch of players organically telling a story. That's all they needed. But we had this idea of smoke and small lights in the grass and these spirits coming out from the fog. And I was late to the thing, so I couldn't be one of the spirits, but it was something that I had planned. I had another one planned for other nations, but everyone's hopefully going to get one. That's the plan.
Cool.
But I ran an encounter or ran an experience, which was very much me telling a story,
right,
which wasn't being told. And trying to tell stories which are not being told is a huge thing for me. Because when you have, and once again, we are purely speaking within PD source material at the moment. When you have these stories, you have this wealth, you have basically a King James Bible worth of information digitally online available to players to either digest all of it or do what I did, which is only digest what your character would theoretically know as an everyday, because it means you can then have conversations with people to go, oh, I didn't know that this color was, sacred to your people. Tell me about that. What I found is that now trying to plan something is the next step for me. So we have this event coming called Faithoken. Granted, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. I will not underplay that. But we're running an event called Faithoken, which is folk horror set within one of the nations of the Empire. And it's something we don't really tell every day, because at the moment the story is all about the political aspirations of people. It's all about the integration of a new people into this nation. It's about the war that's ravaging the land. It's not about the scary stuff behind the scenes. It's not about the dread, not about the underlying tension. And that's what we wanted to experience. That's what we wanted to do. I would certainly say for me, your Pokemon evolution of LARPer is trying your first LARP, playing your first LARP properly, planning LARP kit, so getting specific character LARP kit, crewing a game, and then running a game, be that a player event inside an existing IP or your own system. And every LARPer worth their salt has thought in their head, yeah, I can run a system. I can do it. Adam, I'm sure you've done it. You've gone, yeah, I can run a system.
Easy.
Yeah,
I've come up with all my own rules before in my brain and gone, this will be the best system ever.
Best system ever. Yeah, it's fine. There's not like 1,000 people who've done it. And, no one's done a space Western LARP or a Arthurian LARP or a LARP at the fall of the Roman Empire. No one's done those LARPs ever. There are 7 stories that exist in the world. They change slightly, but there are 7 stories. Telling those stories interestingly is important, but making, and this is where we talk about collaborative storytelling, making the stories matter, be that from a storytelling perspective or to the people playing, that's important. It doesn't matter if you are the most innovative LARP where you all do combat through speaking into, say, a desk fan and it's all about whispers on the wind. It doesn't matter, because if the story is good and the characters come away with something that has deeply affected them and is a fond memory, that's winning. That's the next level of winning for me.
Like that. So
yeah,
you mentioned player events and running your own system. But just so I'm 100% clear, a player event is
Right.
taking an existing system with all of their background and their rules, but then writing a game in it.
Yeah. So effectively, what you take is, do you know what it is? It's DLC.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the best way to describe it. It is someone who's not maybe the main story director has gone, I've got a great idea. They go up to the game runners, to the people who own the intellectual property, and go, I've got an idea. It's a great idea. It's a brilliant idea. Let me sell it to you.
Okay.
And if they like it, they go, yeah, that exists in our canon. Run an event. And that's a player event. So it's not run by the game team. It's run by a player or a member of crew of a great idea. It's running your own LARP or own system. You go, do you know what? I don't need this. I don't need the rules. I can make my own one. It will be based on this. I will decide hits, how the names are called, whether it will have magic, whether it will have technology. It's a steampunk system where everyone's robots and no one plays Will Smith. That's the game. Good luck.
I want to play that game.
I mean, steampunk iRobot would be great, but original idea, do not steal. So yeah.
So you've written your plot, and then you have to send it to PD for them to okay it.
Yeah. So the way it works with PD, and this is going to be my own personal experience. Some of my friends, some of my very good friends, have written some very good award-winning LARPs, I should say, because we do have LARP awards now, which is great. No, honestly, I think it's great that people are getting credit for doing cool stuff. You will write something. You will make almost like a skeleton, and you send that off to them, and they go, cool. I like this, I don't like this. And you maybe will probably have some emails to back and forth. I then had 2 meetings very similar to this, where they literally went through it tooth and nail, going, yep, no, yep, this shouldn't exist, this does exist. If you were to do it like this and change this, and they basically make sure it fits the world. Because you've heard about sandpit games, or you got sandbox computer games. Most LARP systems, certainly on festival systems, are sandboxes. So long as you play within the realms of the sandbox, which are the rules, the existing IP, the lore of the world, it's fine. The second you step out of the sandbox, you're not playing in the sandbox anymore, and that's the problem. And that's what they need to check. Sense. They need to check you're still within it. And to me, that was great, because it was lovely having two members of PD, of like high up PD, literally going through my work and saying, yeah, this is good, this is really good, this is bad, remove that shouldn't exist. And basically saying, yeah, we're happy with this, this is good. I'm not going to say they were singing my praise, going, this is innovative, this is amazing, oh, you're the best thing that's ever happened to the UK LARP scene. That's not what happened. What happened was I had a very real, very honest, very frank conversation with people who genuinely care about telling stories. And that to me was huge. And I've learned a lot from them, actually. They've been very kind and given me a lot of their time, along with their sort of support network. They too have given me their time. So I'm very grateful for that. So if nothing else, I want to make sure that's clear.
What's the biggest challenges, apart from COVID at the moment, that you've run into trying to do a play event so far?
It's stuff you wouldn't expect. It's technology. It's making sure information gets out to people in the right way. It's making sure your co-runners or co-crew are in the loop, because I will say something and I'm a little bit ADHD brain. I am ADHD brain, in that I will say 1,000 words and only 100 of those words actually are what I mean. I do something called verbal filler. And some of my very close friends, some of my very dear friends, are able to speak Matt, and having that communication is key. This is so much better than written dialogue.
Yeah, for sure.
I would also say that due to the nature of what I'm running, which is a folk horror LARP, making sure people are aware that it's a folk horror LARP is interesting, because a lot of people, and once again, player events. You go to a player event. Some are talky, political. Some are fight for your life. You're in the middle of nowhere. This is a very different kettle of fish, which is why I want to tell the story. It's not fight every 5 minutes. Everything's going to kill you. There's something wrong here. What's going on? And I don't want to ruin it for people who are going to see this. But I'm going to kill you all. No, I'm joking.
For me, horror, the key is the word horror, which is horrific. That's what it is. This is something which isn't a jump scare. This is something that is horrific.
I cannot comment on that. I want to. And do you know what? After this, I would love to come and tell you about everything we did and give you photos and talk about the fact that we had that. We're going to have that person who's filled the fireworks. It's going to be great. And they're just going to be thrown at the players. And if it affects the actual phys rep for the player, physical representation, for those who don't know, that's fine. I would love to tell you all the stuff I plan. I don't want to ruin it because you're right. Horrific is also, to a degree, it's that. Get Out, the film Get Out, is written by a comedian. Did you know that? Amazing horror film, beautiful horror film, folk horror as well. American modern folk horror, beautiful. It's about the outsider coming into a community and experiencing the not normal. Same with The Wicker Man.
I've only seen the trailer. Yeah,
I'd watch it.
I've not seen it. Okay.
But horror and comedy are more alike than you like to think, because the thing about horror and the thing about comedy is a suspension of disbelief, and then displacement of expectation. A jump scare is a jump scare because, oh my God, something's jumped out at me. But if a jump scare doesn't happen and there's a long, lingering silence, it's the same as comedy. It's all about timing.
Yeah.
And that is so much more frightening. And that's the thing for me. We're doing some stuff which I'm hoping will land well.
Good.
Heck, it might just be a combat heavy event and people go, nah, it's fine. Or it might go really well. And people go, yeah, do you know what? That was good.
I did a modern day zombie horror from America a few years ago now. And there were some real hits at that, which opened my eyes of what it could be. They had like a World War II air siren.
Yeah.
And one of the things the people who were running it did was have a fake crew. So everyone who was crewing was told to say that they were a player. Yeah. And they were given characters and given whatever. So you didn't know who was a player and who was a crew, because when you approach that, you go, oh, I know you're a crew, so I know this is this. But when you've arrived and you're a crew and you're given your brief of what you have to do, and I was playing a character who died on the first night.
Yeah.
And I was like this happy-go-lucky police officer who led the kind of forward group who went before the main group of refugees and explored out. And his name was Dash O'Connor.
Oh, hero name, yeah.
Hero name for him. And I had police body armor on, and I was briefed at the night when people are around the fireplace, get people to talk about how they met and how they all joined and what happened. And I was like, brilliant, yep. And then I want you, that's when this is going to happen. I was like, amazing. So I had my brief and we're going round and everyone's giving their backstories of how they kind of joined us. And then it gets to someone saying, oh, Dash, how did you? And the entire time I'd made horrendous bad jokes, ideas, and just this lovable, nice character. And I'll give you very quickly, I'll speed it up. It was good death. He says, you see, I was a cop. My dad was a cop. My granddad was a cop. I always knew I was going to be a cop. And although me and my dad were very different people, I won't talk about that. One of the other people was, one of the players was my mum in the game.
Right.
And when we heard about the outbreak, we got my mum and my dad and we got everyone down to the police station. We got some guns. We were holding the line, trying to get as many people out as we could. we'd fortified quite well. And we had local people helping us, but then just from behind us, they just came from everywhere. And like, you know, I didn't get on with my dad. Some of the choices he made, I wouldn't have made them. Some of the things he did, I wouldn't have done them. But he charged out into them, threw his gun behind into us, and locked the cells. And I pull it out of a holster, this big old freaking Magnum thing like this, and I'm like, it was this gun. And everyone's like, oh, nice. And then, is that how you met the others? And I was like, well, no, my mum, me, and my sister were there. We had a radio. For a week, we heard nothing. Then we heard the main convoy. We heard them on the radio. But they were still a month out. So many zombies away and however long out. And we looked at the rations we had. I took this gun. Or, I mean, we've not got enough for 3 people. 3 of us.
Oh, no.
And my sister saw it as well, but I couldn't do it. I thought, it'll be fine. We'll make this last. And I spoke to my sister about it. And she woke me up one night. She had had the gun in her hand, and she said she was thinking about killing Mum so we would survive, so she wouldn't have to see these horrors. But she couldn't do it. She took the gun and everyone was like, as like the first time this character's been serious, like the entire time. The last thing she said to me was, sometimes you've got to sacrifice yourself for those you love. That's kind of stuck with me, and that's what I do. So I'm prepared to sacrifice myself for you guys, Mum, because I love her. And then I look to the person who's playing like the leader of the civilians. And I just go, oh, if anything happens to me, you'd look after my mum, wouldn't you? And she just goes, yeah. And I just went, blank cap. And there was someone behind me with like a blood pack, and they just literally spray this thing forwards. And I'm told, when you die, be a dead corpse. Do not give them any assistance. You are in the middle of their camp, and they are going to have to do something with you. And then as I rolled back, like underneath all of my armor, you could see I'd been bitten and clawed and all of the things from the day when we'd been out before. And people were just like... And then the horrific bit was they had to take me out the camp and decide what they were doing with my body. And they were just like... And then as they were carrying me outside... The ref went and spoke. This was like 2 a.m. The ref went and spoke to one of the people and went, go for a walk out the other side, run in screaming, and then start ringing the air siren. As they were trying to take me out for a burial. And then the players are then just like, what the fuck do we do? Do we just drop him here? Do we leave him? And it's not a jump scare, although there was a good jump scare there. It's that horrific situation that you just...
That gut-wrenching choice.
Yeah.
And that's always so... And that's the thing about watching horror on TV and horror in real life is horror that happens to a person is about choice. Horror that you watch is about stuff being done to a person who may be emotionally invested in. And I want that for my players. I want them to go, oh God, what the hell do we do? You know, do we go off and do this thing, or is the right thing to kill this child who's only stealing bread? You know, is this the right thing to do? I mean, that's not going to happen, but you know, might it? I don't know. Maybe they all signed a waiver. Yeah, I mean, this is it. I want them to have those choices. A big thing for me is about having a believable cast. Believable storytelling, and having something like that happen where they go, that person's dead now, their mum is sobbing and they've got bites on them, what do we do? And then Muggins goes, sorry, okay, I'm going to blast the air raid siren, and then all the zombies in the area will come here as well. That will help. Yeah, perfect. And do you know what? Sound in horror is a huge thing.
Sure.
Thank God the site we've got has a big sound system, right? Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, gonna play with that.
There's so many stories from that event. It was a good one. I won't bore you.
No. I mean, and I would actually, when we're not doing this, I would love to genuinely hear them all. I've got loads of amazing stories where I played a complete pacifist non-com character from a post-apocalyptic game which involved actual vehicles actually being run at the same site where we're going to be doing Faith Token. It was amazing. It was a great bit of storytelling. It was brilliant playing a character who didn't do fighting, because I'm a fighter. I love fighting. That's a big thing for me. But playing a complete non-com and playing a person who was going out in the woods collecting mushrooms, and then seeing bandits and legging it as an NPC, I should say. So I'm disposable, in the player's eyes. It was huge. It was massive, but it was a believable world, and that was cool. That was, to me, that was one of my favorite crew.
The
Also
one
playing
thing
a vampire
that worked really well at it was the not knowing who was a crew and who was a player.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a name for it. I can't remember what it is, but
Schadenfreude. Probably.
Because as a player, as much as I don't want to admit this, you do react slightly different when you know someone's a crew and when you know someone's a player.
I mentioned it just now. You're disposable as a crew member. People view you as disposable. You are fodder. If you've got the crew member coming in with you on the fight, on the end battle, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to keep an eye on you, but I am going to keep an eye on this person. You may be a king, but this person paid to be here. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it sounds like I definitely want to go along and crew your event.
You are more than welcome to. I have, Excellent. If you were to, I do have something in mind for you.
Excellent. Tell me.
I will do.
Maybe do some photography, which would be nice.
Yes, actually, I genuinely need, and I believe there are photographers as well. I love photographs at LARP events. They just make it feel. I don't know how you guys do it. You spoke of Ollie Facey a couple of months back, and once again, amazing guy. Has taken pictures of me that make me look attractive, and I have no idea how the hell he does it. So I owe him many beer. But LARP photography, I think, is an art form, because you have these people who just are able to blend into a crowd, take this amazing, immersive, stunning shot, and then release it and go, there you go. I've taken 14,000 pictures this weekend, and 400 of them are up to my standard. Whereas, of course, I'd be like, yeah, that one with the thumb in it, that's fine. Let's use that. Whereas, you guys are fantastic. Honestly, and you should do another chat about your own personal LARP photography, because it's brilliant. It's just amazing. You've taken some amazing pictures of me, actually. There's some wonderful ones of me beating the absolute living crap out of this horrific monster, where I've had my weapon thrown off and I'm just beating the crap out of it with a knife. Beautiful. Literally fantastic. I show it to people all the time and go, there you go, that's LARP. That to me is one of the pictures.
Cool. Let's finish with tips for new players, because everyone has the most amazing tips for new players.
Yeah.
The questions I've got is, so I'm a new player. What is the first thing I should buy, please?
Shoes. Yeah.
Tell me more.
And I'm not talking medieval shoes. I'm not talking big goth boots. I'm talking a decent pair of walking shoes, a decent pair of leather boots. Because, one, boots are cool. Secondly, you will be walking. In any game you go to, you will be walking more than you expect. One of my friends, who is a beat copper, he's a very good police officer, walked 16 miles in a single day at a LARP event without going to battle. A good pair of boots will see you through. And my caveat to that is make sure you have a decent pair of socks, and not just one pair, but about 2 or 3 pairs per day. Because going off and changing into a dry, warm pair of socks is one of the most satisfying things ever. You will see me nip off into my tent to change socks purely because I need to change, purely because I need that comfort. And that's a big thing for me. If you're going to be camping, be comfy.
I love
So that's
sealskin socks.
Oh yeah, sealskins. And do you know what the big caveat with sealskins? Making sure you spend some time with those socks off. Spend some time in your tent with your socks off, hung to one side, folded inside out, chill out. Spend some time, spend some you time, let yourself recharge, because you pretending to be someone else for 24 hours is hard. Or however long your IC in character, that is. Going off and spending 5-10 minutes just having a breather, having a cup of tea, having a chocolate bar in a wrapper so it doesn't break immersion. Huge, massive thing. Always recommend it. It's a big thing for me.
And the very last question, any tips on how to find my first game? I'm very new coming in and I don't know where to get started at all. I've bought my shoes. Brilliant. Now I actually want to find a game.
Cool. I would look at the things that you're interested in. So LARP isn't just medieval fantasy. It's not that.
What?
I know.
Take that back.
I would love to pretend that Role Models completely had it right. As good a film as it is, I love that film and I will die on that hill defending it. Because Paul Rudd is my god. But what I will say is look at the things that you're interested in storytelling. Is it sci-fi? There are some great sci-fi LARPs. Do you like Warhammer? Warhammer 40k. There's some great Warhammer 40k LARPs where you basically play not Space Marines but Imperial Guard.
There's a video about this.
Yep. There is one that my partner plays, which is all about colonialization in space with different alien races called Greencloaks. Really good. It's a Nerf system, so it's not swords and shields, though they do exist in the game, but Nerf guns. And they are. I went to my first game a while back. Amazing. Some of these guns, they're just incredible. The modifications people do on them. I didn't know you could mod a Nerf gun. It's incredible. Do you want to do medieval fantasy? Well, there are several dozen systems in the UK. And going on Facebook, I appreciate not a lot of people like using Facebook. Going on UK LARP on Facebook or UK LARP Kit and looking for recommendations. Failing that, I will plug the system that I play most, Empire LARP, run by a group called Profound Decisions. Gentleman has a very similar name to myself. He's Matt Pennington. He's been doing LARP for a long time. You're basically playing a nation, one of thousands of people on a field. I should say there's about 2,000, 3,000 people in the game. Yeah, it's a big one. It's one of the big ones. There are 3 big ones, and I'll go into them in a little bit in just a moment. But you're basically playing a nation in part of a larger empire who are beset by barbarians on all sides and talking about the international politics as well as the extra-national politics and war magic of that world. You've got other games like Curious Pastimes or CP. Fantastic game. Much more what you would consider a traditional LARP. Very similar to LT, the Lorien Trust. Very similar games, though the stories are very different. Magic, when you hit someone, you call damage. You don't do that at Empire, but Empire has less. It's got a more restricted progression of a character. Your progression at Empire is more of a social thing. It's a political construct. It's a social contract. Whereas CP, LT, you have a mechanical benefit as if you were leveling up or gaining experience. So you do get that Empire, though, to a lesser degree. All 3 of them are good games. All 3 of them are fun to deal with. LT's been around the longest. CP, I've heard amazing things. I've got some very good friends who go to CP and will wax lyrical. Very similar, different nations, different cultures within a game world. But that one is a lot more what we call PvP, or player versus player. Whereas Empire, it's very much frowned upon to do that. It's more of a political PvP landscape rather than a physical PvP, though it does exist, which is why they have a police force. Those are fest games. Festival games normally have thousands of people. It's not got a ref with you all times. You go off and you find your own game. The continent, so Europe has a few ones, Epic Empire, Conquest of Methadea, things like that. Realistically, the best thing to do, Reddit. Reddit's fairly good for this.
Really?
Reddit. Reddit's got a UK LARP scene, an American LARP scene, and a lot of people do ask questions on that. And the one thing I would say, honestly, is just talk to people. just talk to people, because we have, I've done everything from, running LARPs to running a LARP for a local county council at a Dark Age site, where we got people involved in the game through just saying, this is what we do, this is the game we play, go off and have a look on the website. There are people who run YouTube channels. I'm sure Adam won't mind me mentioning Mark Humes, Sherlock Humes from Tabletop Weekly. Now he's got his own channel where he does Empire LARP chats. You've got famous LARPers across the UK scene who are making YouTube videos. I would say, if nothing else, you can contact us. Contact Adam, contact me. I am happy to direct you to a LARP. That would be, I will make time for you. If you write on this and you want to know about LARP, I will genuinely contact you via YouTube or whatever medium you prefer and have a conversation with you about LARP and get you in touch with people if I don't know them. I would rather the hobby grow, because that's our job.
My job is to be an annoying toff and hit people.
Yes, whereas mine is to be a horrific, racist, xenophobic Middle Englander. But in the real world, I'm a very fluffy, happy, plaid-wearing, basically farmer.
Love it. And I think that's a good way for us to leave it.
Brilliant.
Well, it was a pleasure, Matt.
Thank you, honestly.
I look forward to seeing how your game progresses. You've not got a date for it yet, have you?
No, actually, we do. And in fact, we had tickets go live and basically sell out, though we may release more tickets if there is a lot of interest. We do have a bit of a wait list at the moment, so I need to speak to our lovely event organisers at Eversley, the Gunman Airsoft site there, run by Feast Your Eyes or iLARP. We need to speak to them about getting more tickets released. 19th of May, 2021, we are running Empire LARP Presents Fae Folken, a Marcher horror event. And there is a Facebook, if you do want to go onto it. It will be folk horror, so I don't want to undersell it. Meant to be scary. So if you're interested, come along. If you'd like to crew and try your first LARP, come along. If you just want to gawk, come along, and I will give you a job.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully we'll be doing some more different LARP chats. If you've been enjoying this, leave a comment below. If you'd like to do a LARP chat with me, give us a message, and that'd be good to hear from you. So from me, Adam at ULARP, thank you very much, and I shall allow you to say your own goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this, and I hope you're all staying safe. And honestly, Adam, thank you so much for having me on.
It's been fun. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.